Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast. The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live across the world at MichaelDukesShow.com on the internet, and of course around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting from an undisclosed secret location. We won't tell you about it except for it's comfortable and warm. All right, Hump Day, Wednesday. You guys ready for it? We can see Firearms Friday from here. It's the end of the week. I can just see it around the horizon here. We're loving it. We're liking it. We're ready to go. Today is jam-packed with stuff this morning. We're going to start off here in hour one with some discussions on what happened yesterday in the Alaska House. And we'll lead up into that discussion. Will lead up into our conversation with our friend Sarah Vance, who will be joining us. In just a few moments for discussions on all the shenanigans that went on in the House yesterday and last week, and we'll get her hot take on everything that. On everything that's going on, but let me just sneak peek it. Let me give you the preview. The too long don't read version of this whole thing that's TLDR for you internet geeks. Is that basically the legislature's not interested in giving us a full PFD? Nope, they're not interested in having that conversation at all. Now, by legislature at this point, I mean. The majority. And I'm going to be calling out some names today because there's just no other way to do it at this point. You've got to call out the names of the people who are doing exactly what it is they're doing. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to have a conversation with Sarah Vance, and then we will change and slide across the hall to the other chamber when we get into our discussions in hour two with State Senator Mike Shower, who's going to come in for the Shower Hour of Power, and he'll give us a kind of a feel for what he sees happening in the Senate side of things, because the Senate has not had their PFD discussion as of yet, and we get to see and talk about all that here going on this morning. So. Hi, how are you? Are you ready for another day of radio adequacy? I mean, it's not excellence, it's not mediocrity. It is adequacy, and that's about it. So, let's take a look at yesterday. I think they had something like overall, I think it was like 20 amendments that they got through yesterday. I want to make sure that I don't misquote that. There was a whole bunch of amendments that they went through yesterday, and I was just looking for the number because it was there. It was a lot. It was a lot of amendments. And you could see a particular theme that was coming out again and again and again. Those amendments failed 18 to 21. 18 to 21. Most of those amendments failed right along that line. Now, again, you know what was interesting, of course, is that now we have, now we have a masking policy in the chambers, in the House chambers, that makes it optional. Last week, they shut the whole thing down because some of the people weren't following the mandated masking that was going on. Now, last week, it was 18 to 17 because there were 5 people who were out sick on the minority side. And at that point, somebody pushed the button and said, oh, let's make this mandatory. We'll have a good excuse not to show up and do it. So they suspended all the work of the legislature last week. And this week, everybody's back, and now it's not mandatory. Now it's just obligatory or, recommended. And some members are wearing masks and some members didn't. And now all you see, of course, is all the amendments failing right along those lines. I mean, if you can't do the math on this and do 2 and 2 is 4, then something is definitely wrong. So there were a spate of amendments. The first and foremost, amendment number 1, was to pay a full PFD, and it failed. Again, 18 to 21. Now, here's what's interesting on this. There was some crossover on this. You saw Neil Foster, who is deep in enemy territory, I guess I would say. I mean, should we describe them as enemies? I mean, should this be like... Should we be using verbiage and analogies that are like wartime things? I don't know, but it seems to make sense. He's deep in the camp of the enemy. He is the co-chair of the House Finance Committee on the majority, but Neil Foster voted yes on the amendment for a full PFD. He basically said that he supported the amendment because PFD cuts are a regressive tax on the poorest. Now, that is good cover for him. Interestingly enough, we had the names of the people on the Republican side of the world who have allowed this kind of stuff to take place include, of course, Bart LeBon from Fairbanks, Steve Thompson from Fairbanks, Kelly Merrick from Eagle River, and, of course, Louise Stutz from Kodiak, who is the chair of the House. So you have 4 Republicans who have allied themselves with this majority and gave them exactly what they needed. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who's a Republican has to vote, but you would think that if they were elected from that camp, that the voters would expect them to kind of be of that smaller, more conservative, less taxes, follow the law, full PFD kind of mantra. But they're not. They're not. If they had followed along, first of all, you'd have a Republican majority in the House. The Republican majority would be nigh on to bulletproof at that point, because I think it would be 22 if I do the math right. 22. But they voted against that amendment for a full PFD. Later on, McCabe put forward a second amendment to increase the PFD, this time coming with money coming from the POMV, and there was vociferous debate on that. Interestingly enough, this time around, George Rauscher voted he voted for it. That was the third one. Was it the third amendment? Here we go. This is the amendment number 3, which is an amendment for a full statutory PFD, a payback for last year's PFD, and removal of the energy credit payment. Because here's how they're working. And you can see the themes that are flowing through the legislature right now. They talked all about, expectation. And we don't want to raise people's hopes, which, by the way, is exactly the same argument that Peter Micciche used last year when he voted against a full PFD and instead just voted for the 50-50. He could have been the tie-breaking vote on a full PFD last year. And he told, I didn't want to raise people's hopes. What? I just didn't want to raise people's hopes that maybe they'd get a full PFD because, it'll come out of here and what? But that's become the mantra. We didn't want to raise expectations. We didn't, we could pay it this year, but what about next year? It might not be sustained. You guys have been deciding this thing by fiat for years. So do you really think that if we get a full PFD this year that we will absolutely 100% expect a full PFD next year? No, because you still haven't solved the PFD issue. But it sure would be nice to get that full PFD this year. I mean, post-pandemic, post-recession, everything else, the high oil prices and the inflation and the war. And, it sure would be nice to get that, But no, we couldn't. We just couldn't. But, we don't want to, give them those expectations of what we're doing here. It's astonishing. But that is the whole political thing. So then we got to Amendment number 3, which again was the from Johnson and Kirka, who said, full statutory PFD, payback for last year's PFD, removal of a large energy credit payment. And interestingly enough, as we go through here and you see these things, you're starting to be like, what is going on? Why is this happening? What's going on? So anyway, this is the madness that was happening yesterday. Not Rauscher, Kaufman. I'm sorry, not Rauscher. My bad. It was Kaufman who voted against the PFD, and he voted against which amendment was it? I just want to make sure that Amendment 3. He voted against Amendment 3 as well. He voted against Amendment number 2, and he voted against Amendment number 3, or Amendment number 1. So I don't know what Kaufman's doing, but he voted against all 3 amendments that would have, in some way, shape, or form, put forward a full PFD. But anyway, Amendment number 3 was, again, removing the energy credit payment. And you could see the arguments that's been going on about this. And you could see, I think it was Ivy Sponholtz that was quoted a week or two ago saying, it's not a dividend. It's not a dividend. It's an energy payment. It's a relief payment. It's not a dividend. She was very adamant about it. It was not a dividend. And we saw that last year with the decoupling of the payment of the permanent fund from the earnings reserve account, which is statutorily where it's supposed to come from. They just took it out of general funds instead. So you could see that slowly but surely they're trying to make it so that there is no dividend, and then if they give you money, it's only by their largesse that they give you money. Oh, well, it's an energy relief payment. We can do that. God love Sarah Palin. She was the only one that gave us a full PFD and an energy rebate payment on top of it. But I digress, I guess. All right. Well, we got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense, Liberty Base, Free Thinking Radio. Representative Sarah Vance is up next here on the program. We'll return right after this.
Your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
I think it is crystal clear that it is not a dividend, says Deshana. Yeah, exactly. Henry says Bishop, Machicki, Revak, von Imhoff, any one of them could have been the tie-breaking vote, yet they chose to steal our money. The blame doesn't lie just with one senator. It lies with all of them. Except, David, there was only one senator there who had taken the pledge from Clem Tillian, one of the framers of the PFD, and had sat down with his constituency and promised and swore that that was what he was going to work towards and signed a piece of paper to say he was going to do that. He was the only one of those 4 that did that. You have to look to see what Kaufman gets for freeing up a slot to allow Foster to vote for all things PFD. I mean, that's the thing. It's a swap. I mean, that's the thing. It was a vote swap where Foster got a chance to look like a hero to his people, knowing it was not going to go anywhere, and Kaufman was whatever he was doing. All right. Well, I suggest, since I got a new phone thing here, I got to make sure that we're going to be okay with this. Let me get this thing rolling. How about that?
Your call has been.
Well, that didn't. That's sad. What did I do here? Let's try this one more time. The call was forwarded. It's called pandering, says Kevin. All right.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? Are you coffeeed? Are you caffeinated? Are you ready to go?
I've had a sip.
She said, I've had a sip, just a sip. All right. Well, I can't imagine that it's been fun the last couple days, but we're about ready to dive into it. You all good?
I'm good.
Okay. Boy, you sound crystal clear. I'm using a new phone system, so I'm like you sound really good. So, all right. Well, let's dive into this whole thing here in just a second. We've got more people on. I'm going to let you consume some more real coffee. I won't even offer you virtual donuts this morning. You just consume that real coffee, and we'll be right back to you, okay? Sarah Vance, our guest here on the Michael Duke Show. Okay, just more proof that we need a con, says Kenneth. And, I think you might be right. I mean, I've been reticent. I've been hesitant to do all that, but I think that you might be right. Oh, all right. Sarah Vance is going to be our guest. The legislature is no different than the lying media, CNN, MSNBC, and others. If it's just an energy payment, I still want my full PFD, says Marty. That's exactly what I was saying. I mean, Sarah Palin gave us a full PFD and an energy rebate. Jim is making an argument that a full PFD is robbing the IRS of some money. Wait, energy rebate? I thought it was a snow machine incentive payment. Oh, man. All right. Let's see here. I'm scrolling backwards here. Sarah Palin was good to us, but Suzanne at Must Read seems to hate her and is really going after her. She's obviously backing Begich. I don't hate Sarah. I just think that there's some political ramifications to it. For sure. I mean, I also like Begich as a candidate. I like Chris Bai as a candidate. The question is who's going to end up in the Final Four and who's got the best chance of winning. I mean, obviously, I will be ranking the Republican candidates probably, the Libertarian and the Republican candidates if they get to the Final Four ballot. But I don't think I hate anybody. I read part of Suzanne's article the other day, and it wasn't. I don't know if she hates her. I think she just brings up some realistic components of the political baggage that comes along with it. But maybe there is some spite in there. I definitely think that she's backing Begich. I would not disagree with that. Okay. You might as well go ahead and pronounce the L in Salmon because nothing else matters anymore. Got a little smoked salmon over here. All right. Let's jump into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. All right, welcome back to the program. Hour one continues. We just finished talking about all the nonsense going on in the legislature. To give us a first-hand account of all the nonsensical stuff that's going on over there, let's jump over to our first guest for today, and that is Sarah Palin, GOP state rep from District 31 down on the Lower Peninsula. She joins us this morning straight from the asylum, giving us all the reports of what the maniacs are doing down there. Good morning. How are you doing, Sarah?
Doing pretty good. But wow, what a slip. I'm not Sarah Palin.
No, I did. Did I say Sarah Palin? I'm sorry.
You said Sarah Palin.
All right, I'm sorry.
Michael.
Well, there's like 15 things saying Sarah Palin on my screen right now, so it's Sarah Vance. Sorry, Sarah. Too many Sarahs, and I obviously have not had enough coffee this morning. You sound better.
Have another sip.
I will. I'll have one more. All right. So Sarah Vance, GOP state rep from District 31 down in the peninsula. See, we all make mistakes. I mean, I'd be trust me, you talk 10, 12 hours a week right off the cuff, you're guaranteed to make at least one mistake in there somewhere.
That's true. That's true.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about stuff that's going on down there. First and foremost, the whole thing with last week and this whole bitterness of, oh man, we masks or else, you're trying to kill us all and we can't, and everybody's sick, and so click, we're down, we're out, we're shutting down. And of course, the immediate turnaround on Monday, how now everybody was safe and masks were optional. It was all about the numbers. It was about math, not masks, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The speaker was just looking for an excuse to not have floor, but not have to accept the responsibility for herself.
Right. And if it hadn't been an issue over masks, they would have had to find some other way to drag up some other thing to cause them to shut the floor down, even if it was just at the chair's discretion to shut the floor down because members were out and they did, even though they only need 25? How many I think they need 25 to do the business of the session, or is it 30? I can't remember.
It's 21.
21.
They just need 21.
21. All right. So 21 to do the business of the House on the floor, and that's what they need. All right. Well, so it was obvious based on that huge reversal, or I saw the light and now it shouldn't be mandatory. It should just be voluntary. But now, of course, we saw exactly how all the votes started falling down yesterday, and every one of them was 18 to 21, 18 to 21, 18 to 21, where last week it would have been 18 to 17, right, for every one of those, because they were missing a huge chunk of their voting block, as it were. And it's just more politics as usual.
Yeah, it almost felt like a exercise in futility yesterday, but you have to make them do it and say, well, are you really gonna tell people no full PFD again this year? And yeah, they didn't even blush. And the really shocking part is that they would not even agree to a 50-50 split. So I pray that everyone has a long memory this fall.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I hope that people, because again, every representative is up for re-election, and every senator, with the exception of one, Donnie Olson, I think, is the one that is dodging the bullet on that. But every senator is up for re-election. So you got 59 out of 60 legislators up for re-election, and I really hope that they remember that. I'll be honest with you. If I was running a campaign, I would have radio and television ads that did nothing but pound on that. I mean, it would focus in on the voting board with their names circled in red for voting no against a full PFD. And you would have the full voice of doom and gloom saying, they voted to take your PFD. I mean, I would just hammer the hell out of them. I hope that people remember, but here's the thing, Sarah. I remember back in 2016 when Bill Walker vetoed the PFD. And I immediately said to myself, and I may have said it on the air at the time, I said, oh, he's toast, because that is the political third rail. Nobody's going to want to do that. The Senate's going to get up and override that veto. And then nothing happened. And then I'm like, well, those people will all be voted out because people just won't, those legislators will just be voted out because people won't stand for that. That's their PFD. And then nothing happened. Now, granted, since then, we've changed out a bunch of the legislators, and many of those who were ambivalent to challenging the PFD have been changed out. But at the time, nothing happened. I keep waiting for this silent majority I keep hearing about to spin up and do something. And unfortunately, there just have not been any real repercussions here so far.
Say, my district certainly did something. And there were repercussions because I'm here now.
Right. Well,
Because,
right.
right? So there are a few
Oh, there,
districts who said, hey, enough's enough.
no, and I'm not saying I'm saying holistically as a whole. It
Right.
was, yeah, we changed out a few. Like I said, you were there, and eventually a few years later, we got Ron Gillum and we got Rob Myers, and some of these anti-PFD folks kept, now the Chuck Kopp's gone and Jennifer Johnston, but it wasn't in 2016 when it happened. I thought, boy, the next election cycle, 2018, is going to be a bloodbath, and it was like.
Yeah.
Crickets. And I was like, Walker obviously didn't get reelected. I think that was his doom, no matter what. But I fully expected the people to stand up and make their legislators pay attention, and nothing happened.
Yeah, obviously, it's been 6 years. That's the shocking part about it. 6 years, and I feel like people are just losing hope. There's been so much rhetoric out there. Oh, well, we can't afford a PFD, and then comparing is like schools and roads, then you're being greedy if you want a full PFD. And we keep comparing this to that, and it's simply a false choice.
Right.
The founders, if you will, of the PFD said the people get the first draw. The PFD, and then we can talk about government services. And you want to compare revenue and taxes to the size of government, not the PFD.
Right.
And that's been the false choice that the people have believed.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's frustrating to watch. So, we had how many amendments went across the floor? I read it somewhere. I've been reading all the different stories this morning, and I read it somewhere. And was it 30 amendments, 40?
We were on number 24.
24.
But there were a few that were not offered. So we only got through about 20.
20 of them.
But there were at least, if I remember correctly, at least 6 that were directly full PFD opportunities for people to do the right thing.
Right.
And then, of course, there were back payments that would have paid all of the back pay. Then once that one went down in flames, then we went year by year for back pay to give people the opportunity to do the right thing. And then the interest on the dividends that were not paid.
Right.
Did you know that's more than $1 billion?
Yeah. It's like a full half of a PFD just in interest payments that money is earned. Because most people don't understand. This is the 6th year. It's been 6 years now since the PFD was taken. But for the first 3 of those years, 3 of those years, the money never went anywhere. It just stayed in the earnings reserve account. It was never spent because the argument was, well, we need this for government. And then it just sat there. And it wasn't until the 4th year that they drew into it through the ERA draw. And I think they're going to probably do the same thing this year. But again, the money's just sitting there. It wasn't helping the economy in any way, either the best way through the private economy or even the worst way through the public economy. It was just sitting there earning interest, which I guess that's great, except for that's the people's money. That's not government. That's the people's take on this. That's the thing that most people don't understand about the PFD. The PFD is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what the state earns from all the other sources when it's all said and done. Now, that fraction is built up because it's accumulated, and it's the power of compound interest and everything else and investing. But that is the people's money. It's just a small little taste of what the state is getting the full blast from.
That was talked about on the floor, and it's amazing how you sit there and you look around, seeing if anyone's heartstrings or conviction that this belongs to the people. I didn't see it. I saw less of that than I have any other year, and people have already made up their minds when we walk on the floor. And there's nothing that we could possibly say that's going to sway them to consider changing their vote. And they've justified that government services is more valuable to the people than their dividend. And that to me is astounding. I even said it in my speech. I said, the dividend we know will go to every there's no other budget item that we know this one.
Yeah.
And yet they've made up in their mind, nope, the government services do a better job at providing for the people than the people's money in their own hands. And that's the part that I just can't shake.
Representative Sarah Vance is our guest, GOP state rep from District 31 down to the peninsula. So six, I think, would you say six different opportunities to vote for a full PFD? I expected there to be a lot of eye rolling when anytime anybody started to go back into the history of the PFD, because that's what we've seen from the other side. On the Senate side, when it was, read across that you're right, the dividend is supposed to have first take at everything and all that. And I mean, there was some proverbial eye rolling on that, like, oh, please, we know better than you how to spend that money. That should just be on us. And again, that goes right back to what you were saying. Government services reign supreme. The government spending reigns supreme, not the private sector. I mean, again, we're coming out of a pandemic, which had severe economic consequences, on top of the fact that we weren't even fully out of our statewide recession. We were just starting to climb out of it now. And now you've got the beginnings of runaway inflation at 7% on top of everything else, the supposedly transitory inflation. I mean, Alaskans are getting killed. I think it was Kevin McCabe that read off a bunch of costs of different goods and stuff across the floor yesterday, and they just all kind of ho-hum. We still know better than you how to spend it.
Mm-hmm. And they feel like it would be an overdraw of the fund, that it would be taking more money out. And that's the goal, is they want to protect the fund at all cost. They want to grow the fund for the future, for future government spending.
Right.
And I believe that there's another $1 billion transfer in this budget, inflation proofing, of course, to go back into the corpus. And you saw in the past several years that Bert Stedman was socking away billions into the fund, and the whole idea is to get more of the money from the ERA back into the corpus. They can use the excuse that we can't afford to pay a full PFD, and then they have the POMB draw that, of course, goes directly to the general fund for government spending.
Right. Well, and this is the problem. This is all about government spend, again, protecting government over the public economy. It's the government economy over the private economy, and again, that whole thing of the politician's disease of somehow we know better than you. And you're right. The ultimate goal is to hit that $100 billion mark, where they're drawing $5.5 billion every year out of the permanent fund, and they have they've got no worries about money in the future. Of course, we all know that, as we've seen already with the spending spree that the majority is trying to push into this, including billions of dollars in forward funding and everything else, that they're going to spend every available dollar that's there. And if they could take a part of the PFD and continue to whittle down on the PFD, they will take every available dollar there until there is no PFD, and then they will spend all that money, and then they'll go, well, now we need more revenues. Now we need more revenues.
Well, they're already saying that. We just don't have enough. And the current proposed dividend is about 25%, and then 75% to government.
Right.
And then, of course, this energy rebate. And Ben Carpenter even called it out. He said, if you're going to do the energy rebate that totals about what a 50-50 would be, why don't you just go ahead and call it a 50-50 split?
Right. Well, they are very clear on that. This rebate has nothing to do with the PFD. It is not a PFD. It is no, it's not a PFD. And, of course, then you heard all the arguments about raising expectations. Oh, if we pay a full PFD this year, then, what precedent does that set for what precedent did it set that they paid the PFD for the statutory amount for 40 plus years, and then you just arbitrarily decided to cut it back? I mean,
right.
You give us a full one this year, we're not expecting a full one next year because the issue is not settled. We haven't protected the permanent fund dividend formula. We haven't done any of those things. But you could at least give some relief to Alaskans. And again, it all comes back to, don't worry, children, we know what we're doing.
Yeah, and they don't even want you to have the expectation that you're going to get a 50-50 split.
Right. No. I loved it how the Republicans finally said, look, we're going to come to the middle here and meet you in the middle at 50-50. And immediately the anti-PFD crowd moved the goalposts and said, oh, you're willing to compromise? Good. 75-25. That's where we're at. And I'm just like, that's not how compromise works.
Right. Because I'm wondering, who are they compromising with? Because we've heard it all year. Oh, well, we just need to compromise. Really? Who are you compromising with? Because you haven't moved from your position.
Right. Exactly. And that's a huge part of the problem. All right, Sarah, hold the line. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with Representative Sarah Vance, not Palin. Vance, Sarah Vance. She's going to continue with us here in just a moment, and we will see what she has to say about the rest of the budget and what we expect here in the coming days. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay. Sarah is with us here in the chat room this morning during the commercial break, and we are ready to go. Let me go back here and see what else other folks are saying. Alaskans should expect their legislature to follow its own laws. Yes, I agree. I think that is important. Daniel said your live stream is offline. Thank you, Daniel. I restarted it and fixed it. Hopefully it's back up again. But if we give them their PFD, we'll have to raise taxes and we'll lose your precious government services, no fire or police. That was Ivy Sponholtz's comment. And we've heard these kind of similar things as well. We saw Von Imhoff make the same kind of tirade earlier, or maybe it was late last year, talking about the bridges and the roads, and they'll all fall apart, and ducks and cats and chickens will all be living together. It'll be mass hysteria. But that seems to be the big tack that they're taking. The first thing that they attack, Sarah, is always the public safety, right? So public safety in schools. Those are if we do this, we'll lose all of our roads, schools, police, and fire. It'll all be gone.
If you take a look at the budget, the police and the roads and things like that are tiny little blips in the budget.
Yep.
Now, HES and education, health and social services, and the education budgets make up more than half of the budget. Keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah.
More than half. All of these little blips on the graph. So when they start threatening your roads or your public safety, it's baloney.
Right.
And it's a complete scare tactic. And well, you have to choose, just like my predecessor, either you want taxes or your larger PFD, because you can't have both. False choice.
Right. Because if you follow the law, you would have your full-size PFD, and you'd have a government that would be forced to live within its means. And quite honestly, if that meant having to generate new revenue to provide services, then that's an equitable split instead of affecting the lowest 80% of income earners, and especially the lowest 40% of income earners are the ones that are paying the brunt of this by losing the majority of their PFD.
Absolutely. And we would be forced to talk about what we want our size of government to be.
Yeah.
What do we now, if we are basing our size of government off the size of the permanent fund, we're never going to have that conversation.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. The PFD is the wiffle that keeps getting whacked back and forth across the net each year. I mean, the shuttle, I guess. It's if you're playing badminton, it's the shuttle. But whatever it is, it's the little ball that keeps getting batted back and forth across the net every year, and it sucks up all the oxygen in the room. There's no discussion on on really fixing it from the other side. I mean, we've been talking about it. You, as a minority, have been talking about it. The governor's been talking about it. Many, punditry, talking heads, policy forums, everybody else is talking about it. But everybody else is like, I mean, even the Fiscal Policy Working Group said, hey, we got to fix this. And we got to fix it holistically. We can't just take it, in isolation. We have to take everything and look at everything together. And that was a pretty diverse group of folks on that thing. And yet, at the end of the day, no, we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to keep batting this thing back and forth and deciding by fiat what your PFD should be.
Do you remember yesterday the few passing moments of a discussion of the fiscal plan?
I had to laugh because I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched a few outtakes, and then I was following a couple Twitter feeds that were, giving the updates as they went along. Because, hey, I got a job, I got to work, right? And so I was following it, but I started laughing when one of the Twitter feeds, the guy who I can't remember who it was that brought it up, that we're not following what the Fiscal Policy Working Group said. And I'm like, well, that's the first time the Fiscal Policy Working Group has been brought up on the floor of the House this entire time. They did all that work, and nobody's brought forth this full plan. Didn't have a combined session where you could sit down and look at the full presentation and everything else. I said, really, this is the first time we're even talking about this, because the fiscal policy, and of course the part that they pulled out was that it had to be done and it included revenues and cuts and taxes and everything else. And I was shocked. You?
Oh yeah, it was almost insulting. And the interesting part is that it was an amendment to the 50-50 dividend, the 50-50 split of the POMV. And they wanted intent language that said, this is the intent that it will be part of a fiscal plan that includes like $300 to $500 million in additional revenues, work towards reduced spending, a spending cap, at least that got an honorable mention. And the consternation of just that simple intent language was astounding to me. But here we had the people that have been telling us, oh, we have to compromise. And they could not agree on intent language that included the simple language of just saying, yes, we want to, this means we're going to work towards this fiscal plan. And finally, I think we got 24 votes, but then when it came down to the actual vote of the 50-50 PFD, it fell back to
18 to 21. Hold the line. We're jumping back in. Here we go. All right, we're continuing with Sarah Vance, GOP State Rep District 31 down in the Lower Peninsula. We're talking about yesterday's floor session of the House, where they had 5 or 6 opportunities to address and support a full PFD, and of course, they all failed and floundered, and even some of our own, the minority members, voting against every option. I mean, I'm shaking my head as to why that happened. But Sarah and I were just in the break. We were just talking about, to me, one of the most infuriating moments that I saw is when Andy Josephson objected to some new intent language that was being recommended. I think it was bipartisan. It was Ben Carpenter and Garantar and Snyder and McCabe. All 4 of them put forward this new intent language. And there was objection to the intent language because it doesn't reflect the bipartisan working group's required revenue. This is the only time I've ever heard anybody mention the fiscal policy working group's work on the floor in any substantive way. And I felt like somebody just slapped me right in the face. Sarah?
Well, I do have to say that Representative Carpenter has tried to mention it, and he always gets in trouble by the speaker. Every time he tries to talk about it, saying, are we going to hear this? But yes, you're right. It was brought forward with intent language that the 50-50 dividend would be part of the a fiscal plan that included a spending cap, $300 to $500 in additional new revenues, and work towards, reduction in spending.
Right.
And there were objections and so much consternation that, well, this isn't the working groups. This isn't what they said. We needed taxes. And so I stood up and said, no, wait a minute. This doesn't talk about anything of taxes. It does talk about new revenues. And surely we could stop trying to fit a square peg in a round hole of talking about the same thing of taxes that the people have rejected year after year.
Right.
Maybe we could come up with some new ideas on revenues. And, boy, they did not like that conversation.
No, and I find it really astonishing that both the House and the Senate have pretty much ignored all that hard work that was done over this last summer by a group of folks who, again, could not be more philosophically divided in the long run, but unanimously came together at the end and said, here you go. Here's a plan, but it has to be done in total. It has to be done holistically. It has to be done, you can't pick and choose. Here's what it should be. And yet nobody wanted to talk about it. And again, they only bring it up when it suits their argument. And they probably, I don't imagine Josephson got smacked down by the chair over talking about that. But you're saying Carpenter, anytime he brings it up, gets a little hand slap over it. The whole thing is offensive at this point to me. I'm so frustrated. But what's going to happen, today? What goes on now? I mean, are we now past the opportunity to get a full dividend or even a 50-50 dividend in the House at this point? Are we moving beyond that into more mundane stuff and the nuts and bolts of the actual budget?
Well, word on the street is that there could be another vote coming for a full dividend. So we'll have to see, because we do have all the deadline for amendments has been submit, but we can do an amendment to an amendment, that we could just write it on the fly.
Yep.
And so I'm hearing that another opportunity is coming. So I don't know where exactly it's going to come. So you just have to watch the floor to find out.
Oh, I see. We call that a tease. We call that a tease.
I'm teasing.
It's a hook. It's a hook to get people out there to watch that stuff. But again, it cracks me up, Sarah, because you said, "Did you watch this?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have. I have a job. I don't have time to sit there and turn gavel to gavel on and grab the popcorn and just watch it all day." Because I mean, this is a multi-hour debate. Who's got time to sit down and watch it? Only the people who are being paid to be there, I think, at this point. Or
my goodness, yeah, We're having floor again at 9:30 this morning and expect it to go all day long.
Yeah. No, it's going to be it's going to be crazy. So tell us about some of the other stuff you're seeing in the budget, this new proposed budget, and some of the things that are really sticking out to you as we look at this. Because like I said, all of a sudden, we're flush with cash. I mean, we got money coming. We got money coming from places we never expected it. And so now this legislature has decided, we need to, we need to spend it. And I noticed that there was no discussion on paying back the CBR or anything else. They've got plenty of other. They're going to fully fund education for 2 years, forward fund it to the tune of billions of dollars. But they couldn't even slip a few $100 million back into the CBR, which is owed like $9 billion at this point.
No, Representative Carpenter and Finance Committee tried to get, I think, $250 million put in savings.
Right.
250.
Right, just 250.
And the vote passed, and then they rescinded the vote. They said, no, we didn't want it to go that way. We actually didn't want that vote to pass. So they did it again and got the votes that they wanted, where they wouldn't even put away $250 million.
It's astonishing. What else is sticking out for you on the budget here?
Obviously, foreign funding of education, like you said, more than $1 billion. That one is, hey, we don't have. Actually, yesterday we didn't hear that we can't afford a full PFD. At least they that, but we're gonna prioritize a certain group of Alaskans by forward funding to protect their job for a year. I'm okay with forward funding education by principle so that they can plan their budget a little bit better. But I've always said that I think we should get to a place to forward fund the entire budget. That way, one year we talk about budget, the other year we talk about policy. But we're not there yet.
Yeah.
The other area is an additional, I think, 57 million education, on top of the BSA, on top of the forward funding.
And I'm sorry, you broke up. There was a $52 million in addition to the forward funding.
In addition to, and you know, in my mind, until we have a fiscal plan, we should not be doing any additional large sums of money like that, because how are we able to have a discussion about priorities unless we look at the full fiscal plan?
Right. No, I mean, that's the thing. We've got to look at it all in total. I love how they keep pulling things out in isolation. And again, that was one of the things that the fiscal policy group, pointed out, is that we keep trying to take these little bite-sized snatches of these things, but they're all interconnected. It's like a Jenga puzzle. You pull one, it pulls on everything. You've got to take care of it all at once and look at it holistically as a whole system, as a whole thing. And nobody wants to do that, because if they did, this is the point where they all realize the emperor has no clothes, right? They'd have to admit that there's actually a problem in what's going on. I said this yesterday to Brad Keithley. I said the worst part and the most frustrating part for people like me who are, into the politics, and we've been watching it, but we're looking at it from the outside, we can see, here's a problem, and here's a problem, and here's a problem. We may not have all the answers for how to fix those, but we can see that these are problems, and yet the people who are associated with these things are like, oh, no, there's no problem. We got this covered. Don't worry about it. And you're like, I could see it's a problem. And they're like, no. Don't pat me on the head, put me in the corner, and just say, let the adults talk. That's the most frustrating thing.
Well, I think that's the conversation that's coming. Right now, this is the easy part of dealing with the budget. It feels like a game that we play with the majority. They have already made up their mind how they're going to vote, and we bring forth our amendments. We try as we may, and they just all vote no, and then we send it over. We say no, we don't want to support the budget. They get their 21 votes. If they can't, they don't have they delay the floor until they can take somebody out to the woodshed. They have a conversation. They come back, they get the votes, they send it to the Senate. That's when things get dicey.
Right. Well, I'm hoping we're going to get some information in the next hour from State Senator Mike Shower. Hopefully, maybe something's happening over there, although I don't have high hopes of that. We got less than a minute here, Sarah. I want to give you the floor to give you a chance for your final thoughts for today, what people should be watching for today and the rest of the week.
Well, there's a lot of different important bills being heard in the Senate that you want to pay attention to, that we need your public comment on. Don't neglect those important pieces of legislation, regarding things, CRT and vaccine rights and education, things like that you need to be paying attention to. Don't let the budget distract you from those important bills.
All right. Well, we appreciate the hard work you're doing down there, Sarah, and we look forward to finding out more. Thank you so much for coming on board, and thank you for all you do. We appreciate it.
Have a great morning, Michael.
Folks, we're out of time. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show continues. Hour 2 dead ahead. All right. We'll give Sarah one final bite at the apple since she's still on the line here. Sarah, it's just you, me, and 50 of our closest friends here, 70 of our closest friends on Facebook and YouTube and everything else. So I'm going to give you the last few minutes here just to kind of summate. I mean, I probably talk more than I should this morning, but I'm agitated, and I can't even imagine my agitation must pale in comparison to yours and McCabe's and everybody else who's on the floor trying to do the right thing here. This has got to be one of the most frustrating things you've ever done.
Well, it's I don't have gray hair for a reason. Boy, I didn't start out that way.
I know. I got an older.
Remember how young and innocent I looked?
I got an older picture of you up here from your first campaign, and your hair is all brown. And then I saw the picture from the floor, and I'm like, wow, this has really probably been kind of stressful because you're silvering up there. We don't call that gray in my house. We call it silver or Arctic blonde. You are turning
Arctic blonde.
Arctic blonde.
I tell you.
Yeah, you're getting some stress out there.
Just know that it's because I poured my heart out for you. That's the thing. It's heartbreaking that the people just won't keep their word. And, it seems so simple to us, right? And granted, solving the problems of the state is no small thing. There's hard decisions that have to be made. But there's some things that I consider simple that if we do this, then all the other things will force us to examine those, and we can't get past the easy solutions because people just simply don't want to. And I just want to tell people, don't give up hope. You know, um, just it's darkest before dawn. That's what I keep telling
Right.
myself.
Don't grow weary in well doing, right? I mean, that's the thing. You still got it. You still got to be, testifying. You still got to be calling in. You still got to be waving signs. You still got to be doing all those things because that's what they want. They want to wear us down. They want to make us just so defeated and so disappointed and frustrated that we just throw our hands up and walk away.
It's a game of attrition, and they're really good at it. And that's when we have to muster, we have to dig deep, and we have to refuse and just be consistent. Our public testimony calls and emails has dramatically decreased, and we need to hear from you. I'm telling you, it really matters.
Yeah, well, and I can tell you why it decreased. I mean, the last time I testified last year, after being on hold for nearly 3 hours, I finally got a chance to do it. But again, and it's in the middle of the day. So here I am working at my desk with my phone on speaker, trying to get work done while I'm kind of listening because you can't help but listen at the same time. It was not a very productive day for me. So after 2 hours and 45 minutes, I finally got a chance to testify. And the testimony was overwhelmingly in support of a full statutory PFD. And then you get the comment from Josephson like, oh, well, we understand what you guys are saying, but we know better than. I mean, it was the whole Paul Seaton thing all over again. Oh, you just don't understand what's going on. And my blood was shooting out of my eyes at that point, and I'm like, man, am I going to waste my time again like that? I don't know. But you're right. We can't grow weary in well-doing.
Well, the other thing is that we need to be talking to our Chamber of Commerce. We need to be talking to our local governments, to the others that influence and have lobbyists here in the state and say, we want you to fix the budget. And that doesn't mean cutting our dividend. And the Alaska Chamber did a poll. Are you okay with using part of your dividend to support state services? And in their poll, most people said no. And it's important to speak up on those influencers that says, we want you to focus on the economy to strengthen us. That's what's going to get us out of this mess.
Right.
So it's not just calling in for public testimony. It's having those important conversations with the business community and influencers that these legislators are listening to.
2 quick questions, and I don't know, we've only got about 2 minutes here, so 2 quick questions. One, does this make the con look more attractive to you, and do you think it makes it more likely to happen?
More attractive? I'm resident. It's dicey.
I'm with you.
Dicey.
I'm with you, but
hurts the conversation. You bet it does.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's probably going to be the only way we're going to be able to serve. The other way we could do it, and this is the second question, was we got to get some of those people out of there that are the business as usual crowd. I mean, we've got to get the Merricks and the Thompsons and the LeBons out of there. We've got to get the wishy-washies and the Stutzes, the people who've been there for a long time and who keep doing the same thing and flipping the party table over, essentially. And we've got to change that, right?
This is the year to do it. I know that there's a lot of discouragement with this ballot measure 2 and the jungle primary and ranked choice voting. That feels like 52 card pickup, doesn't it?
Right.
But I'm encouraging people learn the game and beat them at it.
Yeah, that's the thing. We got to do it. Again, don't grow weary. Just get, if you can't get motivated, get agitated, I think is what I used to say all the time. And maybe that's what we need to do is get more agitated about it. Sarah Vance, again, lovely to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming in and good luck today on the floor. We look forward to seeing what you guys have to say.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Sarah Vance, our guest here on the program, The Michael Duke Show. All right. We're going to be joined here by Mike Shower in a minute. It seems we do put new people on and they flip. Someone convinces them, says Edie. And I wouldn't disagree with that. It's almost like it's the Stepford Wives thing, right? I mean, it's almost the Stepford Wives, or not Stepford. Yeah, or Pod People, whatever. You send them down there and all of a sudden they get subsumed by everything that's happening. Oh, yes, I'm a stalwart defender of must do what I am told. And then it's all over. It's crazy. 5 years of public testimony, says Joseph, and there hasn't swayed a single one of these folks on the PFD. That's the literal definition of insanity. He's not wrong. Mike Shower's our guest. You ready to go, sir?
Oh, I've got a cup of coffee. I guess that's a yes.
Hold the line. We're right to jump into it right now. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast. The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator, and around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you can pick up the live stream, the podcast, and so much more. Don't forget, podcasts are available every day on CastBox, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify, just to name a few. If you subscribe, you'll get that downloaded to your device every day. If you just missed it, we just finished up with Sarah Vance, who is down there in the peninsula and just went through all that mess in the House yesterday. But now we're shifting gears. We're crossing across the hallway into the Senate side of things, and we are joined for our weekly guest, State Senator Mike Shower from District E, who comes on board to talk with us about what's happening on that side of the lunatic asylum. I mean, are the inmates still in charge, Mike? That's all I want to know.
Oh, yeah. Nothing's changed.
Nothing.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
Yeah, nothing, not a thing has changed. All right, so I guess first things first, since it's hot and it's topical, we just watched this. We just watched yesterday. We watched all these members of the House attempt to put forward 5-6 amendments to pay a full PFD or back PFD or a form of a PFD or something, and we saw them get riddled with bullet holes over and over again. We saw Andy Josephson mention, finally, for the first time, really any kind of substantive mention of the bipartisan fiscal policy working group's recommendation, but he only pulled out a little bit of it. Never, again, not. I mean, give us your thoughts on what happened yesterday.
We watched parts of it, Mike. I mean, I had committee and other stuff going on, obviously, but we watched it, had staff watching it, and the question is for you. Were you surprised at what was said by who and the results at the end of the day on the House controlled by the Democrats? Were you surprised?
Well, let me say first, working backwards from that, was I surprised of what the final vote was? No. Was I surprised at some of the talking points? Not really. I mean, it's always, you always get that feeling of refreshment when somebody like Neil Foster stands up and says, this PFD cut is the most regressive tax and blah, blah, until you realize that it's all kabuki theater. It's all just political theater. He swaps the votes with somebody like, I don't know, Kaufman or something, and he could still go home to his constituencies and say, see, I fought for a full PFD, even though I'm in the majority and in the leadership of the majority. I can't get, but I voted for you. I mean, it's just, again, kabuki theater.
you're not wrong that some people will look at the board and talk to others and count the votes, and they will know whether or not they have to vote for or against something. Is it political suicide, right?
Right.
And they will understand whether or not they have to, they get the pass, if you will, to vote for something they don't want to vote for. So when they go home, they can say they voted for it. They watch the board. I mean, you've watched this many times, even in the Senate. You'll see somebody here, maybe somebody that promised in their, last campaign, I'm going to fight for that full PFD. And then they watch the board because they're the swing vote. And
right.
They're like,
and they come down to the end and they're like,
not,
oh,
right?
yeah. They come down to the end and they're like, okay, I could do that. And here's the other thing that got me. Let me tell you the one thing, the new narrative that we're seeing out of the House majority. And quite honestly, as I mentioned earlier, this actually started earlier with the Senate president when the Senate had a vote on the full PFD, and they started talking about expectations. We just don't want to raise people's expectations that there might be a full PFD and then not have one, because that would be crushingly disappointing. And we don't want to pay them a full PFD this year, and then next year there's no guarantee. Is this sustainable? I mean, we may not be able to pay a full PFD next year. Well, nobody expected that you were going to pay a full PFD next year. We don't expect anything at this point, but you've got the opportunity, you've got the money, you've got everything there. Why not pay? Well, we just don't want to raise their hopes.
Well, Mike, every politician needs to live or die on what they say and explain it to their constituents. But I will be the same guy I've been from the beginning. I'll tell you exactly what I see and exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in amendments for a full PFD this year. I'm going to vote for a full PFD. I will look at a 50-50, as I have said many times in the program, assuming that it either has conditional language that a constitutional amendment passes. And if it does not, then no. And if it's statutory only, then no, I'm not voting for it. If they tie it to the budget or do anything else, then no, I'm not voting for it. And no, because that's not what the people in my district overwhelmingly want. It's not what I ran on, and it's not what I'm going to do. But Mike, this is a campaign year. So you're going to watch people count the votes and see, can they get away with it? You talked about Kaufman and Neil Foster swapping votes. Well, to be fair to James, he's never really been the big PFD guy. Didn't really run on that. So,
right.
You can love or you can like that or not, but at least to be fair to him, he's being fairly consistent with his position. He's not switching it because it's a campaign year and his district is just not that fired up about it compared to others. All right, fair enough. I'd rather deal with somebody like that that's at least honest about it than somebody that's not honest about it or that is switching their votes or playing that count the vote game because it's a campaign year. If you think the freaking little energy rebate is not bribing people for their votes in an election year, you're a fool or naive, Mike. That's exactly what it is. And they've got to keep it separated from being tied to the permanent fund or the dividend, because then it destroys the narrative that the dividend can be paid.
Oh, yeah.
Any amount.
Yeah, it is not an energy. It has nothing to do with the PFD.
No.
Absolutely nothing. Sorry.
Except that's where the money's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. Except that's
I
where
don't know how you get away from explaining that. Well, that's kind of where the money's coming from. It's the whole thing of Mike, I read it. I mean, the fix is in. I told you this a month ago.
Oh, yeah.
But it's been probably 3 or 4 weeks when I did the whole Facebook Live and the fix was already in, and told you, well, guess what Senate Finance, did yesterday. So it's now we know which bill. It's Senate Bill 199.
Right.
That's the one they're going to use to bring to the floor. That has the whole poison pill of it's got to have $800 million in taxes, right? For this.
God, this is Bert Stedman's favorite new ploy, tying everything to everything else. Oh, you can have what you want, but you've got to give us all this to make it. It's not law until you do this or that. It's not law unless you agree to vote for my thing over here. It's not law this contingencies on all these things. I mean, I can't even see how that's legal, quite honestly, but.
Mike, this is 3 sections. Read it this morning to refamiliarize myself. Section 3, 4, and 5 of Senate Bill 199, which has the infamous, oh, look, yes, we will give you the 50-50 split of the earnings of the percent of market value, but we have to raise $800 million in taxes by 2026. And if not, then this fails and you revert to and stay at. Basically, the legislature can do whatever the heck it wants. Legislature.
Right. Although they're saying the 75-25, right? Because that's their.
Well, that's what it is, yes. But Mike, even then, come on. Even then, it doesn't say shall, it says may.
Right.
Appropriate.
Yep.
So it doesn't even then say that they're going to do it. It just says, oh, well, that we may, I'm reading it right now, we may appropriate the money if we feel that we want to give money to people, in our benevolence, then yes, we will do it. Mike, it's either it was this or it was the step down plan. It was, we're going to do 50-50 this year. Woohoo, you guys should be excited by that $2,400 PFD as compared to that $4,200 that we can afford without even one penny of deficit spending this year. But next year, Charlie Brown, I'm going to pull the football out from under you. We're going to go back to like $1,100 PFD.
Right.
Then we're going to step it up to a $1,200, woohoo, and then a $1,300. And 3 or 4 years down the road, we'll trust us, Charlie Brown, trust us. We're going to look at it then and come back and wink, wink. We'll think about that 50-50 PFD. Mike, that's what I said. The fix has been in for some time. I was just waiting to see what I told you then a month ago. What was it going to be? Which bill were they going to use? What drug deals have been worked out from finance co-chairs to the House finance co-chairs? Who was going to vote for what? Where did the votes sit in the count? Now it's all kind of coming to fruition. We're seeing it all play out on the House floor. We're going to watch it in the Senate over the next week or two. This is where you are. It's happening as I predicted it would. I knew it, but you got to see it, right? You got to see them finally come out and have to put it out in front of everybody. You go, okay, now I know what they're up to and how they're going to do it. So
I'm so glad that the Senate finance chairs are working the will of the majority caucus. I'm so glad that that's what we're looking at right here, right? Because that's what we were promised. The Senate president said, no, they're going to work the will of the majority caucus. They're not going to go out on their own. They're not going to let their own, personal philosophies on the PFD and everything. This is going to be the will of the caucus. First of all, how do you even know what the will of the caucus is if you haven't? I mean, I'm assuming you still even haven't had a caucus. We're 90 days into the session almost. You even haven't even had a caucus meeting yet, right?
No, we haven't.
So it's good to know that they're working towards the will of the caucus without even really officially knowing what the will of the caucus. Man,
I'm not sure what that will is.
This caucus of equals thing is really working out well for you guys.
Yeah, we're kind of just a bunch of individuals running around talking as we can and whatever. So, I don't know, Mike. I know I have a pretty good idea what the fix is now. I don't know what the final plan is. I've requested a caucus meeting, so at least before we go into these battles on the floor, we can all look each other in the eye, right, and have some idea of what people are up to and how they answer questions or don't answer questions. But so far, we haven't had one. So I don't know, Mike. We may run to the floor without ever having met and talked about this. We're just going to have to duke it out and see what happens. But I go back, same thing. I know you're just talking to Sarah. I listened to you ask her at the end about ConCon, and I know she's still reticent, and you too. And I said it myself, Mike. I'm not like going in there like, whoa, Constitutional Convention, crack that baby open. I'm going, okay, it's not the preferred option, but I don't know what else to do at this point because look at what we're talking about right now. Yeah. We're going to just screw the middle class over. We're going to screw the poor over. We're going to take care of government, and that's going to be it. And I'm looking at you guys and go, what do you expect us to do? A majority of the 60 legislators are not interested in solving the problem. And when they stand up on the floor, like you said, Joseph, we're a fiscal policy working group. Where? The fiscal policy working group had a comprehensive plan that solved the problem across the board. Every piece of it, taxes, spending cap, PFD, all of it. They're not touching a fraction of that, Mike, if any, quite frankly. So who's got to solve the problem? Hard. I hate to tell you folks, but you do. And the only way you're going to solve it, and I'm tired of hearing, well, let's just vote them out. Well, we've tried that. You've replaced 2/3 of the legislature in the last 7-8 years. Oh, yeah. The problem hasn't changed. Yep. So maybe it's time you take it back in your hands. You got one shot at it, folks. One shot only. And you're going to be back to complaining about how the legislators never listen to you. You got a shot this November to vote for that constitutional convention. Put in regular good old Joe the plumbers and housewives that know how to balance a flipping checkbook and get it done. Take it out of our hands and do it. I don't know what else to tell you because it doesn't matter. Logic doesn't apply here, Mike. This is trying to think of some good, wherever you enter the twilight zone and, up is down and down is up. Logic doesn't apply here, No. It just does. Something's in the water. I don't know.
What we have here is a failure to communicate.
The failure to communicate.
That's exactly right. Some man cannot be reached. And that's exactly where it is. And quite honestly, and you don't have to comment on this because I don't want you to get in trouble, but quite honestly, what we have here is a failure of leadership. That's really what we have here. And I couldn't say it any other way. And maybe we'll see some changes come election time. But maybe it won't be enough. And you're right. Even though I am reticent and very hesitant on the whole con issue, at this point, it looks more and more like it's the only solution to this problem. So,
and Mike, if you don't do it now, you're done. It is gone. I'm trying to convince people. I understand if you have reticence on it, so do I. But you got one shot at it. And then it's a decade before you have another shot at it because initiatives are expensive, hard to do, almost never pass. So you're not going to everybody, we'll do a citizens initiative. Yeah, right. That almost never works unless you're Scott Kendall and you take $10 million of out-of-state dark money to pass an initiative about dark money.
Dark money.
Dark money.
Right?
So,
right.
Dark money. So you got one shot, folks. And if you don't take it now, the state is going to, it's over. You've lost PFD. It's gone.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, the state's turning more blue with people moving up from the left coast. It ain't getting better as hardworking regular people move out of the state because we're trying to crush oil and gas. So where do you think the state's headed, folks? That's my point to you. You got a shot in November, and then it's over.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Just grab the reins. And,
Fine.
Whoa there, boy. Whoa. Hold the line. Back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. We'll be back with more and Mike Shower right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right. Deep breath. We're ready to go. We're in the break. Hanging out, just you and me and 85 of our closest friends right now on Facebook and YouTube. All right, Mike. I don't know how you guys do it. I would just be climbing the walls at this point. I don't know how much change is going to happen come election season. But, huh? Yeah,
I don't either.
Yeah,
Show me the strong candidates because you're not going to get rid of some of these people unless you have strong candidates. You have some people you go, that person is never going to beat that person, and they keep running over and over for office. I go, unless you find the right strong challenger, you're going to have the same people come back.
Yeah,
that's what happens.
Yeah,
Mike.
Don't send the perennial candidate back who runs for every office that's available. Don't send the same candidate back that has been defeated 6 or 7 times. I mean, at some point, there's a perception versus reality thing that you've got to acknowledge. Every one of these candidates should have a strong, especially in these districts where the incumbents have been censured or chastised by the parties and things like that. I mean, why isn't the party going out there and actively recruiting and finding people to run against these folks? I mean, that's what kills me. A lot of the problem that we have in this state can be laid directly back at the feet of the Republican Party. Going all the way back, prior to Palin and everything else, you got the whole dust up with Rudrick and they really have done nothing but circled the wagons and shot themselves in the face. That's all they've done. Turned inward and just started blasting away. And we're reaping that reward right now.
Well, you talked about leadership, Mike, and I won't disagree with you there that especially when you go to, looking at the party, the Republican Party as a whole. One, conservatives are really good at circling the wagons. We've talked about that, and shooting inwards and fratting ourselves. We'd call the military where you fratricide, right? When you shoot a friendly, usually, hopefully not on purpose, but that
right.
you turn inwards. I go, we should be pointing the guns outwards because we are, there's a lot of people that we disagree with. Our fight ought to be with liberals, progressive, Marxist, Democrats, whatever, on a lot of the issues. There's things we work together on, but we tend to turn inwards and shoot each other, right? A lot. And so part of it is, a fratricide problem where we do that to ourselves. And then leadership, right? We got to have the big tent, or we got to have this, or that district is not worth it, or whatever. We don't fight. I remember this a couple of years ago. I was disappointed. I had supported Stanley Wright. And, he's a young black man, conservative, military veteran, just a really good young, I say kid, right? Good young man. And he was awesome. But the party gave him zero support. And he was running against Ivy Sponholz. And Ivy Sponholz was going through neighborhoods and saying, I'm your conservative candidate. Because Stanley would go through the neighborhood later and he would be like, hey, I'm your Republican conservative. No, this gal came through. She said she was the conservative. He's like, what? I mean, and he it was like 55 to 45. I mean, the guy could have been over the top had he gotten a lot of support, people out knocking doors. That's the kind of stuff where you go, oh, we're failing miserably at times to do what needs to be done as a party, not only not shooting ourselves as Republicans or conservatives or independents, but also how we grassroots organize ourselves. We're terrible at that compared to Democrats and the left. Terrible.
Right. Horrible.
Don't do a good job of it.
No, and part of it is a philosophical thing, where conservatives and independents, they're more rugged individualists. And the left and the progressives, they are more kumbaya communalists, and so they have no problem coming together and working together. Where the rest of us are like, I'm going to do it. I'm a maverick. I'm going to do it my way. And I'm not going to.
You also, yeah, that's true. But you have a union factor here too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Paid leave to their union members to go out and canvass neighborhoods and hold signs.
Right.
Sending them on buses from Anchorage to the Matsu to sit on street corners and hold signs. I'm like, because Michelle and I have run into them. What are you doing? Oh yeah, the union sent us up here in a bus to hold signs. I'm like, that must be nice to have that kind of support.
Yeah.
Well, that's my point. I can be done with it. I'm just like, but Republicans don't get that support. They don't get unions sending out hundreds of people to canvass neighborhoods for free because they got all the money they want. So we have challenges.
All right. Like and share this video. Like and follow the show page if you haven't before. Please like and follow to make sure you get notifications. If you're watching on YouTube, click the subscribe button and ring the bell. Let's get back down into it. We're about to rejoin the radio. State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do it. All right. We're now continuing with State Senator Mike Shower, GOP State Senator from District E, for what we lovingly like to call the Shower Hour of Power, because he's got something to say, and he's not afraid to say it. All right. I want to give you your head to let you talk about the things you want to talk about, and I'm going to leave that for the next segment. And now we're going to bring up your favorite topic, which I always cringe when I ask you because I know it's a hard thing to talk about and you don't want to give away strategies and everything else. But at some point, Mike, and I ask this at least maybe once a time we talk, maybe every other time. But
every time.
Just every time. How much more of this can you take before you look at this and go, well, this caucus is some real Bert Stedman right here. This is some real BS. I mean, we cannot, no. It's no, it's just not, no. I mean, I got to be honest. At some point, if I was down there, I mean, I would, this is why I would make a horrible politician. But I would be like, hey, take this and pound this right where and get out. That's what I would say. What do you say to that? People looking at this like, can't you form something? Can't you do something different? Can we create 3 different caucuses? Or is it all, you got the majority of the majority, but you've got the minority of the, tell us what's going on.
Well, I mean, look, let's talk about a couple things of that here. First of all, I did that in 2018. I saw the evils and the unethical nature of a binding rule and said, I'm not even going to join your stupid caucus. It just doesn't make sense. And then Shelley Hughes got out and there was just the two of us. And then in 2019, we said, well, we couldn't break the binding caucus, but we had more people, that were in the Senate. It was Hughes, Reinbold, myself, a little bit more tenuous, right? Mia was Costello was kind of like, wasn't real comfortable with it. And so the dynamics were changing, right? And so I thought we would do good with Laddie Shaw coming over, but then that whole thing happened where Giesel and Coghill did their little underhanded whatever they did with Revac, and then Revac came in, and because Giesel had some really negative comments. We talked about that years ago, over very pointed and negative comments towards the military. I didn't realize how anti-veteran that lady was and is.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden Laddie doesn't get in there because Laddie has backbone, and he was, going to hold his line against the PFD, whatever, and stick to his promise. And so then that number changed. And so you have all these little things that change, right, from a voting perspective. And then it kind of got back to the, okay, we're not going to play this stupid game. Stedman and Von Imhoff were the finance co-chairs. We went through that whole thing of the budget reductions, the vetoes, blah, blah, blah. And then, by January 2020, some of us that held the line got slaughtered, right? A little binding caucus rule. They kicked us out of everything, took everything away. So essentially we weren't in the caucus anyways. We stuck around, but there was nothing we could do. I mean, whether we were in it or we gave it to the Democrats, neither was a good option, right? Because all they would have done if the 4 or 5 of us that got slaughtered walked away was they would have just pulled the Democrats in. They would have still owned the majority, but they could have gotten what they wanted anyway. So we're like, it's more fun to sit inside the caucus and throw spears and know what they're up to, right? Because they're going to roll us anyways. They have the numbers with the Democrats. So it didn't matter which way we went. And then that's kind of where we are right now, Mike. It's kind of the same thing. They've already threatened us. Stedman threatened us right up front. He's like, he'll just join with the Democrats. And if you think for 1 second the Democrats won't take that deal, even for a month or two, to have committee chairmanships and the ability to run some things through, come on, guys, don't be naive. They will take it in a heartbeat, even if it's for a short time, because it's power. So don't think for 1 second that if the 5 or 6 of us decide that's it, we're done, that they're not just going to go grab the Democrats and have another Musk caucus, and even for a short time. Of course they will. Like I said, Stedman threatened us with that with organizing last year. He said, if you guys aren't going to join and I don't get to be the finance co-chair, well, then I'm just going to go join with the Democrats. And there's 5 of us and 6 of them, we're going to have majority. Told us flat out. Didn't even equivocate about it. So we're back to, we don't have enough numbers yet to play that game.
This is more of a defensive posture than anything else, is what you're saying.
Well, it kind of has to be, Mike, until we have enough people. We got a couple of people in the middle that don't stick on either side. So we can't rely on those couple people to give us the numbers to then join with a few Democrats. For example, people talk, why don't we do this on a pro-PFD thing? Well, we don't have 7 or 8 Republicans that are going to stick with us on that PFD issue. You ought to know looking at the votes. So, you have a couple Democrats, like you got Donnie Olson, Bill Wielkowski, Scott Kawasaki, that have been real strong on the dividend. Well, show me the 8 Republicans that have been staunch on the dividend lately to give us a majority. The votes aren't there, brother. So I go back to, you can do it, but you're going to just watch the Democrats join with those Republicans, have a majority, and screw you anyways. And then Democrats are in control, of certain committees, and people are going to be happy about that.
Right.
So I'm just trying to point out the numbers that we don't have them yet, Mike. After this next election, if all of a sudden we had 8 or 9, Republicans that were solid, we could do it and we could hold that line. But those numbers don't exist, brother. Watch the votes on the board and see who votes for what and who said what in campaigns. They're not all sticking to it. You don't have those numbers. And then, as I've told you before, there is one reason that I'm holding out some hope of sitting around for a little while, right, is because that election bill is still sitting there that has important stuff we need, God help us, with ranked choice voting. And I'm working with Chris Tuck on this, trying to get this done in the next 4, 5, 6 weeks. There's a chance, right? That pretty girl at the prom date, you're like, there's a chance, right, that she might say yes and go to the prom with me. That we could get that through, and it's got important stuff in it. Ballot tracking and chain of custody stuff. So what are you laughing? I don't know what you're laughing at me.
I'm sorry. I'm just laughing because I'm thinking of Mike Shower looking at a girl saying, "You want to dance?" And she goes, "I would only dance with you if you were the last man on earth." And you're saying, so there's a chance.
Very true. Very true. So that one bill, Mike, if we could get that one, will make such a difference on the security of our election. It's not everything we want, but it's all I can get with a House controlled by Democrats. But if there are some important steps. And so, if I got to suck it up for another few weeks as we're going through this to get that done, because it wouldn't matter what we do anyways. Well, what's the point of our protest is stepping out with 5 or 6 of us if we're going to lose anyways? And I'm going to lose bipartisan election reform. And, Mike, all of this stuff is a compromise, one or the other. You know this as well as anybody. We talk about it. You've been this year, dealing with this world for years, trying to make the best choices that we can with not a lot of good ones in front of us. So, fight the PFD battle. I've already said what we're going to do there in the budget, and I'd like to get that election thing done if we can with something, but that's about as far as it's going to go at best. So that may be the only real bipartisan bill that's got a hope going through, because there's Democrats in the House that support it. Right. So not a good answer that anybody wants to hear. I don't like it either. I'm just, me, I tell you what I see is what it is.
The pro PFD folks, because I think we need to, because people, maybe not be paying attention to every vote and everything else. The pro PFD folks in the Senate are yourself, Shelley Hughes, Mia Costello, Laura Reinbold, and Roger Holland. That's the 5.
Rob Meyer.
And Rob Meyer. That's 6. Too. Okay, so you got 6 that are solid. That means,
and I will say this with David Wilson. Wilson has always also we disagree at the end of the day when we lose the PFD battle, because he'll vote for the budget, which I disagree with because that's how they were funding it. But he is just for the voting side. David has always voted for the PFD, so I would count his vote on that because he's been consistent for the PFD. It's a difference of opinion and how to do it at the end when it fails.
Right.
So
that's 7 who are pro PFD on the Republican majority side. And that leaves everybody else out on the other side, which would be Von Imhoff, Click Bishop, Bert Stedman, Josh Revak, and Peter Machicki. That's the other. Gary Stevens. So it's essentially a 6-7. That's it. It's 6-7 at this point.
Yeah. Regardless of what you think about who and not getting into opinions or anything else, just looking at the board, if we're talking about how they vote, what you just said is historically accurate. That's how the votes over the last year or two have played out. That's where their stance seems to be based on how they're going to vote right now. I don't know how this will play out with all the money we have and all this going on, but the historic positions based on what you just said is accurate.
Almost makes me want to vote for Josh Revak for Congress just to get him out of the Senate. All right.
And you're 3-3 in the Democrats, by the way. Well, not including Lyman Hoffman, because he's wherever he goes, and you never know because he'll wait and he'll choose his vote at the very end.
Yeah, but Wilikowski and Scott Kawasaki and Donnie Olson are all pro PFD in that regard. So,
correct.
Yeah. Man,
so there's your votes.
I just do not envy you. I do not envy you on this whole situation right now, for sure. Somebody said, we were talking about the ConCon here a minute ago. We got about 3 minutes here, 2.5, 3 minutes. But they were concerned about the length of time that's going to take. And some people are saying 5 to 6 years overall to get that fixed. And that could be, but it still may be one of the only ways to fix it. Have you looked at the timeline on this?
Mike, it could be anything. That's the point, is that anybody says they know is lying to you.
Right.
Because nobody knows. But it depends on the lieutenant governor. And, who's the lieutenant governor picked for who gets elected into office this November. Because if it's a lieutenant governor that's a staunch conservative, that's all about doing the right thing, and the Constitutional Convention gets voted on, they set the timeline. They set it up. So the lieutenant governor has the power to do all these things. And unless the legislature can come together with a 2/3 majority and this, that, and the other, well, then it's going to be what the lieutenant governor calls in a lot of cases. So, because this legislature has really shown its ability to get together and do that, right? So, the lieutenant governor will have a lot of power on how this plays out. Go back and look how it's supposed to set up. We've talked about it here, and that's kind of how this will play out. So it depends on who that person is. And, if we get a Governor Walker with a dry gas, good luck. You're going to get hosed on this one. God knows what they'll do. They'll stretch it out and do whatever they would do. But, if you had somebody that was a solid conservative lieutenant governor, then it could go very quickly. We could have the rules set in place by the end of 23 and have the Constitutional Convention in mid-2024 and have it on the ballot by November 24. You absolutely could do that. It's going to depend on how it plays out. Yeah. And those that don't want it are going to try to stretch it probably as long as they can and try to turn people against it or get more people involved, et cetera, et cetera. The sooner it's done, in my opinion, the better. And it is absolutely possible to do so. And remember, it has first call in the Treasury. We can't not fund it. So, the legislature and the little games that these finance co-chairs love to play with getting their little hands on all the money, they don't have an option. It says it right in the Constitution, first call. So it will be funded, and it will be in accordance with the call as the lieutenant governor puts it on, unless the legislature can come together and write the rules and override that, which is probably not likely.
Right. Just another reason why we need to be paying close attention to the gubernatorial election, because not only will we be voting for a constitutional convention, we'll also be voting for the governor and lieutenant governor, and we've got to make sure that we get both of those things in there at the same time. And not get somebody like Walker or Guerra or somebody like that who will slow walk this until the end of the next decade at this point. So
yeah, it could happen, but not the most likely option in my opinion.
Yeah,
and it could happen actually very quickly. It could. It's just there's a lot of it depends. My point is, anybody that says they know what's going to happen is full of baloney. They don't know nothing. Nobody can, because there's too many variables to be played out in this, Mike. There just are.
Mike Shower is our guest, state senator. GOP State Senator District E. We're going to continue with him. One final segment where I just let him take the wheel. God help us all. We're going to be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. That's why we need to elect Charlie Pearson, E.D. Grunwald, says Terry. I wouldn't disagree. I mean, I think that'd be a good choice if you're looking for a strong, conservative, business-minded group, a couple who could put an administration together to get that done. I think we could count on. I think we could count on that for sure. All right.
Well, we could talk about Edie from a perspective of lieutenant governor based on the previous conversation. I don't know who Mike's picked. He hasn't picked anybody.
Yeah,
He's waiting and waiting, and so I don't know. I don't know. I can't comment yay or nay. Because I know what Pierce has now picked as Edie, and I know Edie. Have talked to her. We've known her for years, and on the election stuff, she would be strong, and she would give us what we would need, I think, to make all this work out and to start fixing some of those issues, those things that I can't get from the current lieutenant governor, and that have been a struggle, like that report, the election report from Chewbacca.
Right.
Edie would have handed it to me in person the day I asked.
Right,
Mike, I can't get that damn report. Still don't have it, even though I was promised by the governor and lieutenant governor last year I'd have it. I still don't have a subpoena from the Senate president, who gave one to von Imhoff for the witch hunt against, whoever filed Angela Rodell and why. But I don't have one for a report that I've been asking for almost a year that was produced for the public.
Right.
That is not redacted. So, yeah, I'm kind of looking for who that person's going to be and how they're going to help actually solve some of our issues versus obfuscate and hide behind smoke screens and not do what needs to be done. We're still part of ERIC, Mike.
Right.
We're still part of ERIC. And that's run by money from George Soros and the rest of them. It is a private entity that is directing how we do reporting and stuff for our election system. A private entity. And why we're in that paying money to them, where the director of the Division of Elections, with no oversight from the governor or lieutenant governor, no oversight from the legislature, is able to make policy and work with 30 other states on what we do and don't do and report on. That's the kind of stuff going on that everybody's like, huh? What? Yeah. Maybe you ought to look at that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm pretty interested in who the lieutenant governor picks are going to be.
Well, I got to be honest with you. I'm surprised and shocked at this point that Dunleavy has not announced a running mate at this point. I don't know what he's waiting on, what he's trying to do, what he's trying to juggle on there. But that just, to me, it just doesn't make any sense not to at least have put a team together at this point. To me, and this is just me. This is not Mike Shower. I don't want anybody to say Mike Shower said this. No, to me, it just shows indecisiveness, quite honestly, which is, again, indicative of what I have seen overall in this administration is a lack of leadership, and that's a problem going on for sure. And that's we're suffering that at all levels. Is right now is a lack of leadership at pretty much all levels. Although I guess you could argue that those on the other side of the philosophical aisle are doing a great job with their leadership roles because they're pushing and punching through exactly what they wanted to punch through.
Yeah, and we have some Republicans that are helping it happen by not stepping up or holding the line or, pulling pulling punches when they need to be swinging harder. Because the other side is more than happy to do that, right? When they want something, they can be just as vicious. I mean, in the way that politics is war, it's an extension of it, right? But it's a nonviolent means. So the reality is, you got to punch hard and fight for the stuff that you believe in and what you want. And and I'm not going to comment on what the governor's reasons are for doing things. I don't know what they are, but my concern is that you start losing momentum, because the others are gaining momentum by naming who their running mates are, start building their team, start building up momentum towards why you'd vote for us. And concerning the current ticket for the current governor, I don't know. I don't know what to think. It's kind of being lost in the shuffle. We're not even talking about it. And the other teams are building up momentum. So I just would like to know who it's going to be, so I can decide, is that somebody that's going to work for the things that I want to get accomplished? And a lot of it cycles around the election system, right? And what we can do. So I have big question marks there, Mike. But like I said, to me, what really bothers me is a lack of momentum, right? Because you wait to announce while everybody else does it. While it could be strategic at the end to know, what you would need after everybody else has announced. Well, they've announced for some time now.
Right. Well, and it could be as simple as he's looking to pick a legislator, so he wants to wait till the session's over or something. But again, at this point, I mean, you could have announced
Mike,
that before the session.
But if you did that, if you picked a legislator and they agreed to that, they would most likely either one want to resign that seat so they could start campaigning and raising money and get their name out there and start building that momentum. And then the governor would have the ability to pick who he wanted to replace him.
Right.
So to me, that argument doesn't hold water. Not saying, pointing that spear at you. I'm just saying that to me, from a strategy perspective, that's not a smart way to play it, because you could get that legislator and replace it with whoever you thought was the best pick.
No, I agree. I'm just saying it's one possibility. Who knows at this point? It's all speculation at this point, right? We have no idea.
I have no idea. No idea. Not a clue. I get concerned about lack of momentum if you don't get into the game and start building it. And it feels like it's just, like things are slipping away. And then you got the special election coming up and all this garbage. And you got ranked choice voting. It's just, in August is going to be oh my goodness. So.
Well, we need to, do our best to make the changes we can in November. But at the same time, again, I think the con has now become top of the list as things that need to happen as well. We got to jump back into it here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share. Here we go. Okay, one final segment here of the program for today. Getting ready to wrap things up. The last 10, 12 minutes here. Mike Shower is our guest, and I'm going to give him, like I said, I'm going to pass him the wheel and let him steer the bus for a little bit here. God help us all. Please put your seatbelts on before we go any further here, and make sure your airbags will deploy. Mike Shower, your final thoughts here. What else have we not hit on that you definitely want to dive into and talk about, or what should we revisit? Let's go.
Well, first of all, you always say that, and then you ask some question that just dives us down a rabbit hole. So we'll see how this plays out. But
I'm going to mum's the word. I've zipped it up and thrown away the key. Go ahead.
So there is one that popped up yesterday that's very concerning. I'm a little miffed right now, so we'll see how this plays out. But there was Senate Bill, I think it's 241, that apparently was drafted in December by the governor's office, which was related to the infrastructure money. I just saw it in the last day or two, it just popped up on the radar. But what it looks like now is it's going to go direct to finance. And it's the better part of $1 billion of this money that's going to be spread out through the fingers of finance members to the state and or through the governor's office. Because if you remember back in 2020, when the CARES Act money came in, we had the whole legal battle because everybody was afraid of the zombie apocalypse that wasn't. And so we ran home really quickly as a legislature and gavelled out real fast.
Right.
And then we went through that RPL process that then the governor basically was handing out the money for the CARES Act all over the state, doing whatever, and you got that long list I put it on Facebook a couple nights ago that just showed the hundreds of millions of dollars and things like $45,000 for a trail in Juneau and all these other things like that, and for a sports club or, whatever. You're like, what does that have to do with freaking COVID? And there was all this money that was spread all over the place. And, it was $500 billion, I think, as I put out there for business relief, and $350 billion for this. And now you got this other money coming in from the infrastructure. And after that battle from a couple of years ago of the RPL process and the legal court challenges and whatever, we're kind of back to, we don't know what the rules are. And yet, as I understand, until perhaps May or even June. And yet we have this better part of $1 billion that all of a sudden I see a bill. And here's pages of a bill, Mike, and it's got money spread all over the state, like $10 million for ferry something. And it says districts 1 through 40. I'm like, that doesn't apply to all the districts. Who's getting the money? Who decided who's getting the money? Where's the money going? I don't have an answer to it. $23 million for runway resurfacing in Haines, because, you know, Haines is a big international airport. $23 million? I mean, there's money like this all over, Mike, and I'm going, okay. This is almost like the Biden caucus thing again. I'm like, who's doing this, and who's got their paws on the money? And so it's going to be finance co-chairs again, are going to decide where the money goes in the state, because that works out real well from my district, which consistently gets screwed over. Like when Stedman pulled money for safety roads and other projects because he wanted to force people to vote for the budget. No. So is it the governor's office that decided where this stuff went? Is it it can be the finance co-chairs in both bodies? And how do we get a bite at the apple, right? I'm looking at the same thing. I'm like, does this go through policy? How come this didn't go to, is this going to go to transportation? Because it's mostly infrastructure. We're talking roads, bridges, ferry, airport, stuff like that. Or when are we going to do this? So I'm looking at this right now going, here we go again, Mike. Hundreds of millions of dollars going to flow into the state. And most of us are going to have little to no input to this whatsoever. I mean, how does the finance co-chairs, how do they know what the priorities are in my district if we have an extra $1 billion to spend? How do they know? I don't know what's important in their district. They don't know what's important in mine. I don't know what's important in that one or this one over here. I know what my district needs, right? I know a pretty good idea what the Matsu needs, for example, or Valdez, but I don't know what they need in Fairbanks. I don't know what they need in Bethel or Sitka or Kodiak, right? So here we go again, with another tranche of money flowing in, with just a handful of people apparently going to get their hands on it. I hope it doesn't work out this way, but I predict that it will, because this is what I see taken out of the process. Look, all the subcommittees for the budget have closed. They're done. They closed them down with almost no meetings, and that was directed by the finance co-chair. Was told all the finance members initially, don't even have any meetings, which, you know, like I've talked about that before, and most of them rebelled against that. Said, heck no, I'm going to at least have a couple meetings, you know, with other legislators to talk about it.
Right.
But they're all closed out. So I think this goes to finance, and I go, and then what? We're not going to battle this out on the floor over, you know, dozens of pages of hundreds of millions of dollars spent all over the state. Right now, we're trying to investigate from OMB and find out where's the money going, who made that decision. And so there's things like this happening again, Mike, and you're sitting there scratching your head going, you got to be kidding me. Once again, we're not going to have any input to this and not going to know where the money goes and who's this real. We'll find it. Eventually we can find it, but then it's too late, right? And is it going to be the governor that gets to do it all and his people, or is the regular legislators going to have it? Is it going to be ledge budget and audit that makes the decision for all of us again? Look who's on that committee, right? So
don't
I'm
worry.
Kind of venting here,
Don't worry, Mike. They know exactly what to do with it. They know.
Yeah,
just sit in the corner, Mike, and be quiet, because the adults are talking and they know exactly what.
Go along to get along. Do what you're told, and trust me, you'll be fine. Right? Because that's worked out so far. Yeah, Mike, I'm frustrated, brother. This one bothers me, and I can see this coming already. And I talked to a few other senators yesterday. They didn't know. They're upset, including a couple on finance that are a little bit miffed. We actually heard a bill from Senator Wielechowski yesterday in State Affairs, which I like. It's about the revised process legislature, RPL, revised. Anyways, I can't remember what it was, but the RPL, I always get that word wrong. But that's how the governor spends that money between us and the legislature if we're not there, like we're not meeting.
Right.
And his proposal is like, well, you know, and we talked about it in State Affairs yesterday. So we had a hearing on the bill. And unfortunately, we could have probably done this sooner to work through it. But he's like, you know, hey, and his points are valid. It's like the legislature is the appropriating body. We have the power of the purse. It shouldn't be the governor. It doesn't matter who the governor is. It could be your governor or somebody else's, right? Depending on the year. It should be the legislature doing this, not the governor. And if you look at it, he believes it's unconstitutional, which I look at the data and I would tend to agree with him that it is unconstitutional for the governor to just spend this money. Any governor to do that. It's not related to the current governor, just the process. and the legislature should be doing this. And in fact, we don't. And even if Ledge Budget and Audit was to meet, as you read it, and say, well, we don't agree with this, here's our recommendation. After 45 days, the governor can just do whatever he wants anyways and spend the money. Right. So you go, holy mackerel, that's hundreds of millions of dollars to be spread around the state.
And
so
this new bill, I assume, is not. We're not talking about pennies here. We're talking about billion
almost $1 billion, I believe. I want to say 850 something, but don't hold me to that number. But it's the infrastructure money, at least some portion of it coming this way, and it's a lot of money in a campaign year, with the legislature having, well, I should say, most of the legislature having apparently little to no influence on where it goes. So, yeah. I know. See, I hear you laugh, and I go, I know, me too.
I mean, what do you, what else do you do? This is it. I mean, and the governor putting it forward now, I mean, this could have been put forward earlier. I mean, the bill's been passed for 2 months now, and they're just bringing it forward now. But once all that, what about, why didn't they bring it forward when the subcommittees were still in place and paneled and still meeting? I mean, what's going on?
Well, that's what I'm asking questions on, Mike. I'm a little bit concerned that there's backroom deals being made again. Hate to use the word quid pro quo here in this sense, but I got to wonder, are deals already being struck for who's going to have their, fingers in the pie for distributing this money? And are we going to just roll a bunch of legislators again that don't have any input into the process? Am I going to watch my district and the Matsu, which is the one growing part of the state, get shorted again by a finance coach here that hates the Matsu? And pull money from us while, all the other districts that are friendly or the go along to get along crowd because they've all been there together forever, make sure the money funnels that way. I can see it happening, Mike. It happens all the time. If you play nice and you're on the team, well, yeah, you get what you want. If you don't, then you're screwed. And that's one of my concerns is that, for example, the Matsu, which needs infrastructure badly, not just repair, but growth, because we're having it, like Fairbanks with its 4-lane highways everywhere downtown, is not going to get that money, right? And that's not going to be right because we're not going to have the ability, best I can tell, to battle this out. We'll see. Could be wrong, but based on history, I'm predicting I'm not. And I feel like we're not going to have the input. And I'd like to know how much of this comes out of the GEO bond. Remember that GEO bond that wasn't going to go anywhere? The governor had for about $340 million or something like that. I'm like, I wonder if some of this is spread out that way too, covering those things. It's better than bonding it because I wasn't a fan of the bond to begin with. But anyways, I don't know, Mike. I just wanted to throw that one out there for everybody to look at because that's a big deal. And I just put out on Facebook the OMB links to look at where all the CARES Act money went, and it's pages and pages of data trying to drill down to where this money went, and it went all over the place. And some of the stuff, you're just going to look at that and you just have to scratch your head and go, you got to be kidding me. I mean,
what does that have to do with COVID relief? What does that exactly have to do with? But this is the nature of it, man, and they're counting on us. They're counting on us not to pay attention to this. I got to be honest.
Know.
That's what they're counting on right now. 1 minute, Mike Shower. Final thoughts.
Well, just pay attention, folks. I heard you and Sarah at the end. Don't give up. You have made a difference, right? We broke the binding caucus in the Senate for now. It may be small, but it matters. You've been replacing legislators. Maybe next year you'll replace more and we'll finally reach that, critical moment, critical mass where we're able to get some things done and fix some stuff. I mean, we're putting pressure on them for the election, maybe a bipartisan bill finally. It's not like the people are not making a difference, Mike, on this. So I hope they won't just give up. I understand the battle fatigue. I have it too. I've told you before, I'm tired, but differences are being made if people will stay engaged. We'll see next couple of weeks, and we'll talk about it next week and the week after.
Mike Shower, our guest. Thank you so much, my friend. Folks, we're out of time. We got more coming up tomorrow. Don't know who we're going to have, but maybe it'll just be you and me. We'll see you then. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. The Michael Duke Show. Mike, I'll give you 2 minutes here. Final thoughts. I got to go here this morning. So just any other things that we didn't see. I didn't even ask a question during that whole segment. I know. I was trying to
let me talk.
I know. Let you go. Final thoughts. I know that there's been some discussion on the jungle primary, the special jungle primary because of the mail-in ports, and I know there was a mail letter sent from Kirka worrying about the signatures and everything else. Any thoughts on that before we let you go?
I did send out a letter last night to the governor, lieutenant governor, Gail Phenomii, director of division of elections, the attorney general, et cetera, and a few others. Just asking what the plan was, because I see a train wreck on this one. I think we're going to violate the law again, because they're going to do mail out, which it says everybody has to request it. There's nothing in our statutes to say they can do this. So once again, I think we're going to step around the law. And I asked the Attorney General to get involved in this, and we had a solution or a suggestion. Why don't we send out they got to send out new voter registration cards anyways to everybody, right? Because of redistricting. Why don't we send a postcard out in each one of those and say, hey, if you want a ballot, send this postcard in, we'll send you a ballot. Something that keeps us away from a mail out, because that, as far as I can tell, Mike, it violates the law. And we have, at this point, up to 100,000 people with our over registration problem. We know we have.
Right.
And you're going to send out mail out ballots to all of them, and they're going to go to a bunch of places where there's nobody there or nobody registered. And we don't check forensically for signatures in this state, not the witness signature, not the voter's signature. So since we're going to send out mail out ballots and we're not checking signatures forensically, what's our safety check? How do we validate anything for this election to be certified as secure and correct when we don't know and have no way to authenticate it, because we don't have the data, right? We don't.
Right.
And so we're going to send it out to everybody, not knowing who necessarily gets it, not validating signatures. And you're going to come back and say, yeah, everything's good here. And we know that opens up the possibility of people sending in ballots that shouldn't have been sent in, or people getting multiple ballots, whatever it may be. So it's a problem. There's no great solution to this one because of timeline, but I think we can do it better, and we have to be careful, and we really have to be on guard for this one, because this is, we'll see what they say to this one, but I don't see a good solution right now where we're going to be able to certify the election because the signatures, the Division of Elections doesn't do anything. And
right.
As I said before, my last comment, 'cause I know your time's short, is that the Division of Elections Director, Gail Finami, I told us on the record, they're not doing anything for the compromised data. So we know we had at least 113,000 Alaskans data compromised, plus however many with the Health and Social Services data breach, and they have no plan. They're not going to cross-check them. They're not going to do any secondary verification of those ballots and those people. So who knows, Mike? It's a fights on fair game. I mean, nobody knows.
Right.
And the Division of Elections is going to do nothing. They've said they're going to do nothing. So I don't know how they're going to step into this and say this is a certifiable election, and we know that everything was above board. I don't see how you can say that.
And we know, for example, in Anchorage, my one of my employees, his neighbor, received. She lives alone. She received 7 ballots in the mail at her location for the Anchorage election, which runs off the voter rolls. 7 ballots for 6 previous occupants of that building for herself. And that's just one example. So how many times is that going on? Like you said, 100,000 over voters on the rolls. If somebody wanted to do bad things, pretty easy to make that happen. It's kind of shocking in the long run. All right. Well, my friend, thank you so much for coming on board. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. If there's breaking stuff, we'll talk. But otherwise, I guess we'll see how it happens next Wednesday.
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.